Good evening. I see that folks have started to join. I'd like to welcome you to the Minneapolis Route Options meeting. This meeting is going to cover the east of I-94 route options. It's 5:51. Meeting won't start till 6 p.m. We'll give folks a chance to get logged in so we can get started here. Thank you.
Hey, Nakago, sound and video check.
I can see you and hear you, Nick.
Thank you.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight. It's 5:58. We're gonna give folks a couple more minutes to join us, and then we'll get going. A quick mic check. Can you all hear me?
We sure can.
All right.
And you look good too.
All right. Thank you. All right, thank you for joining us. All right. We'll get going in a little bit here. I see that folks are continuing to join. Right. Well, it's 6 o'clock. In the interest of time, we'll start with some introductions here. I'll just talk a little bit about logistics tonight. So tonight, we're welcoming you to the Minneapolis Road Options meeting. We're going to be talking about the route options along east of I-94. That's the focus of the meeting tonight. The way we've got this meeting set up tonight is that we're allowing for your video to be shown, meaning that folks can see you because your camera is activated. In order to allow for the meeting to proceed, we have muted everyone's microphone except for the presenters. We will get into the questions section of this meeting, and then at that point we'll start to unmute folks who would like to speak. So if you would like to speak, please raise your hand. You can find the raise your hand button on the top bar of the app here, the Teams app. Click on that. That will show us that you've raised your hand, will allow for your microphone to be activated, and then you can ask your question. All right, then I'm gonna start to ask presenters to introduce themselves. I should have started with myself before I got this far in talking about the meeting itself. My name is Nkango Sigolo. I am the manager of public involvement, and I am very delighted to have you as part of this meeting tonight. And then I'll kick it off to Chris.
Hello, everybody. My name is Chris Beckwith. I'm the project director for the Blue Line Extension LRT project. I'll kick it over to Nick.
Hey, good evening, everybody. I am Nick Landerer. I am the Director of Engineering and Design for the Blue Line project. So welcome.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chris and Nick. I'm gonna start advancing some of the slides here so we can know a little bit about the topics tonight. So tonight we're going to give you a quick project overview. We will also be focusing on the east of I-94 options, and Nick is going to get us through those slides, and then we have a survey at the end, before we begin the questions and answers section of this meeting. Basically, we just want to hear what your thoughts are about the options that we're presenting tonight. So we'll walk you through that portion. It's a Mentimeter app we're using. If you want to use your phone, that's great. You could have your phone next to you, and you can scan a QR code, and that will walk you through the process. If you want to use your computer, that's fine too. We'll get to that section towards the end of the presentation here, and then we'll take your questions. Right. Again, for folks who joined after we have kind of given just a little bit of logistics, so everyone attending the meeting knows that your microphone has been muted. But once we get to the questions portion of the presentation, we will allow for folks to ask questions. If you want to ask a question, you could raise your hand. If you'd like to put in the chat, that's fine as well. We are also monitoring the chat part of this presentation. All right. So with that, I will kick it over to Trace to get us through the project update.
Thank you, Nkongo, and welcome again, everybody, to our virtual presentation. Looking forward to having a Q&A at the end of this session as well. It looks like we have about 17 participants, so again, welcome. I'm just going to provide a quick overview of the project and before I hand it over to Nick Landwehr to take you through the East of 94 sub-option that we want to dig into a little more. But this is the Blue Line Light Rail Transit Extension project, as shown on the map here. This project is a light rail transit project. It actually was started a number of years ago when the project portion of the project was actually on freight rail corridor. And for those who have been following the project for some time, you're aware that we were not able to proceed with the project along that route. And so we did a pivot a number of years ago to select the route you see before you, which follows generally, it's between Target Field and Oak Grove Station up there in Brooklyn Park, but it generally follows the West Broadway alignment instead of the freight rail corridor alignment, which we believe serves more people. We believe this is a really great opportunity to invest, continue to expand, advance the project and invest in North Minneapolis with that shift in the alignment. But with that, we've got a couple of options within Minneapolis and really along the entire corridor. But the options we're still focusing on here are in Minneapolis, as shown on this map, and Nick will cover a couple of those. It's located entirely in Hennepin County through 4 communities: Minneapolis, Robbinsdale, Crystal, and Brooklyn Park. We did adopt this modified route that you see before you that did not use the freight rail corridor. That was adopted just a little over a year ago with these couple of options that we're taking a look at in Minneapolis. We have at the same time been advancing an anti-displacement work group, which is not something we've seen, not something we've done in this region before, certainly unique in other states and other regions as well. So we're looking forward to doing this project a little bit different in a lot of ways, including finding new opportunities and ways to avoid displacing businesses, property owners, and if there is displacement, trying to keep people within the corridor and certainly compensate fairly when there is displacement. So the policy recommendation on the route, the final route with the options that we'll talk about today, we are hoping to work through that through the next couple of months, so August and September, leading to what we just want to get it down to a single line end to end. We want to determine how many lanes throughout, vehicular lanes and how they interact with the tracks, and then how many stations end to end. So lines, lanes, and stations is what we're trying to decide over the next couple of months. Next slide will show you just an overall schedule. If There we go. So this is just a high-level project schedule. So years ago, we selected light rail as the mode for this project. And as I mentioned, we did a shift to the route that we're on right now. And now we're moving forward with some environmental work. So an environmental impact statement. We are building upon what we had before and collecting all this information. So when we are talking about getting it down to a single line end to end, that is actually what we would evaluate and put into our supplemental draft EIS, which would be published next year, so that the public has an idea of what the policy decisions, so what the mayors, what the city council members, Met Council, and the county are advancing as the preferred route. So we will open that up again for public comment, make sure we got it right, and then get your feedback on that process. Oops, we went back.
Sorry.
All right. You want to back up to the schedule in the Congo, sorry.
Okay.
The other thing we'll be doing next year is a process called municipal consent. And so that is where we will request from the cities, from Hennepin County and the Minnesota Department of Transportation to review it's approximately 30% design, review that and invite them to provide municipal consent for the project. That's required by state statute. And so that's a process we'll be going on next year. It gets into a little more detail then on some design questions. We don't have to answer every single question in the next couple of months. Some of those questions will be answered in that municipal consent process too. We are working through engineering, continuing the work that we had developed in the earlier version of the project, and then, of course, developing the engineering plans for the new section that we're looking at as well. And station area planning is underway as well. That's led primarily by the cities, the communities, and the county along the corridor. So after this, we'll be developing construction plans. That'll take another 1.5 to 2 years, and then it's about 3 to 4 years of construction. The goal is to open this line by 2030. So that's the overall schedule. And then the next slide, I think we get into the design, and I'm going to hand this over to Nick Landwehr to take you through this part.
Thank you, Chris. And Congo, can you expand the slides so they're maybe a little larger on the screen?
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure.
Again, we're focusing on the East I-94 options and talk a little bit more about the options that we've discussed in the past. The purple line, which goes from Target Field Station down at the bottom, up following the purple from 7th to Lyndale, and that would take us either to West Broadway or 21st. The pink option, which was the East I-94 option, where we come up 7th, turn down 10th, or turn up 10th, and then just as we get past the east, the 3rd, 4th viaducts, turn towards the north and follow the I-94 corridor pretty closely. One of the things that we want to key on is the sub option here in green. It's sub option of that East I-94 option, where we instead of turning right after those viaducts, to continue on 10th Street over to Washington Avenue and then follow Washington Avenue up to either West Broadway or 21st. So all these options, they connect from Target Field Station to all the way up to a station location, either on the west side, either or at Lyndale or Aldrich. So both at West Broadway or 21st. All these options, as you see in the middle of the screen in those little blue ovals, have a route option have a option for a station at Plymouth Avenue. So as you go along through the middle of the screen, you'll see the blue ovals through there that have a station area in that Plymouth Avenue area. The new sub option I talked about in the green is really where we want to make sure that people are seeing this. And this one would have a station avenue just south of Plymouth on Washington Avenue. Our at-grade crossings of 94 would join either any of these. We'd have an at-grade crossing that we either need to cross at-grade from Washington Avenue over to West Broadway, meaning at-grade staying without a flyover bridge through there. We stay within the roadway on that. So next slide, thank you. All right, so the new sub option that we really want to again stress today is this one as we follow up 10th Avenue, that what was shown in pink before is that blue line that tightly follows the 3rd, 4th viaducts, the on-ramp onto 94 and connects over to the north. We want to focus on the green area, and that's where we continue, instead of turning, we continue up to Washington Avenue and then turn there and then connect back in with that alignment on Washington that gets us either to West Broadway or 21st. One of the challenges that we have with this alignment is, once we get to Washington Avenue, there's a very ample right-of-way in that area. So, we can fit light rail and center running in that area, continue with the vehicle traffic in the area and the sidewalks in the area. But that section from the viaducts from about 4th Street up to Washington Avenue is very narrow right-of-way, about 66 feet. The buildings in that location are built right up to the right-of-way, face right up to the right-of-way. So we're working to minimize, if we're on an alignment through here, to minimize the impacts. And we've been working with the Minneapolis Fire Department to make sure that those emergency connections are viable with any of these connections, and they work well for first responders. And we also need to work with the stakeholders in this area to make sure that we're providing safe access along the roadway networks, to the stations, to the light rail. Next slide, please. So this is an existing condition of 10th Avenue, as I said before, very narrow right-of-way. We have buildings right up to the face of the right-of-way here. So existing conditions, there's two-way bike traffic on this roadway, two-way car traffic on this roadway. We have sidewalks on either side of there, and some on-street parking, and there's some vegetation in this area. There's trees planted in the boulevards where it's possible. So next slide, please. So looking at what does light rail look like if we're on 10th Avenue, and we've got a few concepts over here that we're looking for input on and evaluating how what works with all the needs that are for that area. So this option includes a one-way northbound option for vehicle traffic. So as we're seeing in the pointer there, there's a vehicle travel lane that's heading northbound, taking from basically the viaduct area over to Washington Avenue. We have sidewalks on both sides of the area. There's the ability for the boulevard tree plantings to happen in here, and we know with that one lane of traffic that we can keep emergency vehicle access in there in this location. So another option that we've evaluated here is similar to like at the U of M, where we have a transit mall option. So this one, again, vehicles would come off of this as far as regular vehicle traffic, but this would allow for emergency vehicle access along there. So as you see on the right-hand side of what we call the guideway next to the train, we can run buses on that guideway, and emergency vehicles can use the bike lane in this location to get fire trucks and emergency vehicles out on both ways. Yeah, this also helps us provide for two-way bike traffic on either side, and again, sidewalks on either side of this mall with the ability for boulevard plantings in this area. Next slide, please. So, one of the things that we want to look at is vehicle access to existing businesses and residents and destinations along here. And we want to make sure that we keep, like I said, the emergency vehicle access with any of the options that we use. So this map here is just kind of how we evaluate how existing travel gets around. It's shown with some blue areas. Those are existing roadways and connection points to get around to areas. With closing this to traffic in one or both directions, we know there's a new need for how to get to certain locations. For instance, and towards the middle of the screen, you can see there's a cul-de-sac towards the top. That's 3rd Street. If we were to close down both directions of travel there, we need to make sure that there's a way to get there. So this one shows that the new way to get there, or a potential way to get there, would be to come down Washington to 9th and then 3rd, and then that gets to the cul-de-sac that serves that area, and the parking, and international school that brings buses in through there. So we'll continue to work on options here for vehicle circulation, and how that works here. You know, some of the other things that we're considering towards the bottom of the screen is if 7th Street and then continuing 8th Street through from 7th on the west side to get under the viaducts over to 4th Street. So you know, that's kind of towards the middle of the screen where you see that. And then there would be, depending on the alignment, some access closures there, but we would need to make sure that the function of those access closures is maintained in some way or another. Next slide, please. So this is a diagram where we show a little bit more closely that connection to Washington. So this is the ability, the exciting part about the sub option is the ability to get a station in a location that's a little bit more activated and closer to, you know, some key destinations, the business area here on the north side, and really the north end of the North Loop, and really a close connection to Plymouth Avenue, and those connections. So this station, shown in yellow with station on it, is a center platform, running, so in the middle of Washington Avenue at grade, meaning the station is running at the same grade as the roadway, and so folks that are accessing the station could have basically an at grade access to it from both 10th and from Plymouth Avenue ends of those stations. So really, this is one of the key exciting things about this option is really the availability to have this station here and get there and serve more destinations with it. Next slide, please. This graphic here, there's a lot going on, but it really, the intent of it is to show that the station that we just looked at, you know, what the opportunities are over here, and how it offers more connections than maybe the other east of 94 alignment, where we were just north of Plymouth Avenue in that area, tucked up to 94, maybe a little bit farther from North Loop and residential and activities and businesses on that area. And really, you know, one side to 94, where this is in Washington Avenue, so it's a little bit more activated, meaning, you know, more folks coming to it, more folks near it, and really, the statistics here, it shows just this how it serves quite a few dwelling units, you know, a lot of affordable housing units, folks that may be using transit more often. 5,000 jobs that it's in this area. Very easy access to the parks, to the river, to trails around this area. And again, all the development that's happening there, and restaurants and different key destinations on that area. So next slide. So as we move from this green, so we're back at the map, we can see the purple line, that's the west of the 94, the pink line, east of 94, and green, the sub option. All of these options, again, connect to either from Washington Avenue, or well, at least the east side options, connect from Washington Avenue to either West Broadway or 21st Avenue routes. So up there, we can get to both of those. We're really putting a priority to make this an at-grade crossing, meaning not having a big flyover bridge over there. So keep it at grade on Washington Avenue and come back at grade, meaning meeting the existing roadway elevations on either 21st or West Broadway. Obviously, there would be a bridge that needs to cross 94, whether it's on a West Broadway bridge, whether it's a new bridge right next to West Broadway, or a new bridge that would get to 21st Avenue. We think one of the opportunities here with the new bridge and light rail, that we can, you know, maybe create new and improved crossing, and have the option or the ability to potentially add pedestrians and bicycles on that too, just to make the better connections from east and west of 94 to get over that area. Next slide, please. So this is kind of some graphics that take a little bit closer look at what that crossing would look like and what I'm talking about when I'm saying at grade. So this is a 21st option here. So this is if we were to come up Washington Avenue and turn on a new structure that crosses 21st Avenue and then connects to a 21st Avenue light rail alignment. So this new bridge here is what I'm talking about that can have, at least from 4th Street on the west side, all the way over to Washington, be able to handle two-way traffic for vehicles through this area. So, and bidirectional, or the train going each direction in here, and then provide the opportunities for bikes and pedways, bicycles, sidewalks, bikeways along here. And really, the exciting part about this again is, not only is it the ability to provide the transit facility here, but help create that connection from the east and west side over to the river and gets there. And another thing about this is this option helps to distribute the traffic a little more. So where we start connecting over on the west side, would go through grade at the off ramp of 94 here with the signalized intersection. So basically, we're just pulling that signalized portion of the intersection back that's already existing at West Broadway, putting it in a location there, and it maybe helps distribute some of the traffic that's going to West Broadway now, and that would be going over towards the river towards the east side. We can pick them up there and get them across and relieve a lot of the pressure that is in that Washington Avenue or West Broadway Avenue interchange here. So the top is a plan view with the lines, and then there's a perspective on the bottom here. So that shows that tracks how they come across the roadway at grade. So vehicles, when the train's not there and they have the signal, they can continue on Washington Avenue here, but continue over to 21st. And again, we're showing that we could connect probably to 4th Street in this area. Next slide. This is a little bit different look at that same opportunity. Maybe doesn't have the vehicle function of it, but this is a light rail bridge only that comes across. But with the light rail bridge, we could still provide those opportunities for peds and bikes, and that's what's kind of showing. It's a little tough to see on the screen, but in the green and the white there to provide those bike and pedways that cross there. So that's the option and ability to do that with this loop and with the train here. And then what we would want to do is in this configuration and the way it's set up, try to get over lower the existing southbound off of 94 ramp to Washington Avenue underneath it and get the light rail over it. So the freeway ramp is lowered down so we can get a light rail bridge over it and have that light rail bridge connect over to 21st as soon as possible and run at grade in the roadway. So this is one more option that we evaluate. This one's maybe a bit more different and a little bit more outside the box, a little bit more challenging. But as you see here in the yellow or orangish yellow color are two bridges. So one thought is, about 2/3 of the traffic that come off of 94 on southbound to West Broadway are going to the east, going over towards the river. And so what if we peeled that ramp off and connected it over to that side or to Washington Avenue in that location? So we can basically eliminate the rest of the off ramp there, and it makes it easier for us to get a light rail over it. So then there you see a light rail bridge that would come over again as low as we can to get across 94 and then connect back to 21st from Washington Avenue in that area. So this is a third option. This one's probably a little bit more challenging and probably a little bit more different than what folks are thinking. Again, this bridge for the light rail at least has the opportunity to get peds and bikes on there and provide those ped and bike connections across 94. Next slide, please. So similar to 21st, we're looking here at, what it would look like if we were going to our West Broadway option for alignment. And I'm going to talk a little bit about 21st and just we'll want to get some input on that too. But this bridge comes down, the top one shows a bridge that crosses and it's a separate bridge from West Broadway. So West Broadway is just above it. That's the existing bridge that's there. And it's at such a busy bridge, such a busy interchange right now. We'd really like to stay out of that interchange and not bring light rail into the mix there. So what we're showing is a new light rail bridge that crosses just to the south of the West Broadway Bridge, gets through the on-ramp to 94 in that location, and then we quickly connect back into West Broadway by 4th Avenue. So that's one design concept that gets us to West Broadway from the east side. The second concept is one where we are in the bridge there, and again, like I said, and folks that are aware with this area, that bridge and that section of West Broadway, really from at least Lindale all the way to the river, is very busy in this area. So, but what we're looking at is a concept here that would probably need reconstruction of at least the West Broadway Bridge, so we could get the light rail in there and across to that area, and then we're center running down West Broadway the rest of the way. So these are the two concepts that get us across there and keep us low. Now, you've heard me a lot say, staying at grade, staying as low as possible, and really what we want to do is our light rail, what we found is it works best as that when it's operating in the street, so we like to be center running at grade in the street, and at that point when we can do that, it runs with traffic and it's the most efficient. And by keeping our light rail down and at grade, access to stations is a lot easier for folks of all abilities to get to those stations, to get there easily, by just either crossing over on a crosswalk to the station platform and not having to use elevators or stairs or go up and over. So it really is the most efficient and serves our customers the best. So next slide. So this is the next thing that we want to talk about in North Minneapolis area is really tracks, whether they all stay on Washington Avenue, which is the lower half of or West Broadway, sorry, as we're coming over, if we're coming from the east side or from Lindale, and center running down West Broadway. So in both of these options, we have two stations in this core business area between basically James Avenue and Lindale. So we're showing either option. So the option, everything vehicle, one lane of traffic on there, light rail goes down through there. Well, we have two stations in here. What you see indicated in that kind of turquoise blue would be buildings that would be affected by any of these alignments, meaning that we're far enough into those buildings that the building would probably need to be purchased or demolished for that alignment. So that is Washington Avenue, if everything is on there. Above it is the alignment where we would change 21st into a transit way. So just light rail would be running down there. So we would have, bikes, peds, and light rail. We would take vehicle traffic off at 21st, and then that leaves the ability for Washington Avenue or West Broadway to operate more as it does today. That there is a very good potential that section of West Broadway gets reconstructed along with the project also, but would be for vehicle traffic if we were on 21st. So those are the two options that we're looking at, a 21st option with light rail only on 21st, and the West Broadway where light rail vehicle traffic are together on that. And again, both of these show impacts to properties and buildings per se that are in the blue turquoise area. So you can kind of compare the two between there. So that's the technical update for this, and really I'll turn it back over to you, Nikongo. He's got a few questions for the crowd here using Mentimeter. And then we're available for questions afterwards.
All right. Thank you, Nick. Really appreciate it. So I am going to be partnering with Emily on this one here. So we're going to be switching screens. I'm going to stop to present, and then we're going to get to the Mentimeter. But we'll start with a question to get warmed up here. So if you have your phones, you can scan this QR code. This will bring you to the Menti site, and you'll be ready to go. And again, for folks who joined us a little later, just so you know that mics have been disabled. If you would like to speak, please raise your hand. We're going to unmute your microphone so you can speak. And if you have a question, you can put it in the chat. But as we advance with this Menti, the survey here, we'd like to get through this, and then we'll get to the questions part of the presentation. So hoping that
Nakongo?
yes.
Sorry, Nakongo, could you put the slide back up just with the barcode in case folks are still scanning that?
Sure.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
And for those who don't do this often, just point your phone camera to the QR code in there, and it'll pop up the website that you have to click on.
All right, so if you are getting there, the first question is, what is your favorite destination in North Minneapolis? As you're done answering those, this question, we will pull up the result, and then now we'll get into the real fun part, of this presentation, where we'd like to collect your survey on the route options themselves. I'm seeing a question in the chat. I'm not seeing this question, just the title with a thumb up button. Oh, now I do. Okay, great. Thank you. All right. Awesome. Emily, are you ready? Stop here. Oh, okay. Sorry. I am going to do something real quick here to allow for Emily to be able to present. All right, Emily, that should be ready for you to go. There we go. All right, works. So we got 7 responses, and you can see them on the screen if everyone can see this. All right, still some responses are still coming in. We'll give folks maybe a minute. Sounds good. Then we'll go to the second question, Emily, if you just want to slide to the next on your phone, just go ahead and, and click next. That will bring you to our second question. And this question is, if light rail is advanced east of I-94, which option do you prefer? So as Nick presented, the east of I-94, east of the interstate option was the purple line that would have gone along, that would be going along the, basically the freeway. And then the east of I-94 sub option is the option that Nick presented in green that would continue along 10th Avenue all the way to Washington, and that would go north on Washington. All right, I see the responses are coming in. We'll give folks a little bit of time to respond to this question. There's two questions.
Full disclosure, I voted on the first one, and I will tell you it was cookie card. I am not voting on these. I just was giving my input.
Okay.
So if anybody saw me, I was logging in just to make sure I could, and it worked.
All right. Sounds
Okay, full
good.
disclosure, I did the same thing and I put Sammy's, and I'm not voting on these.
Thank you. All right, I'm seeing a question in the chat. Sharon is saying green, which is the east of I-94 sub option. So we're, I don't know how we'd add that to the survey here, but you will note that both Sharon and Ron would like to see the east of I-94 as the option for the two east of I-94 options. All right. Sounds good. We'll go to the next. So this next one is about the connection, how we would connect to either 21st Avenue or West Broadway. So if you'd like for the tracks to be along West Broadway, please say so, or 21st Avenue. Go ahead and mark your preference for this one. All right, and in the chat, Ron is mentioning that Ron would like to see the option going along 21st. So that would be a 1 for 21st there.
And there's one more for 21st in the chat too.
And
Sharon and Ron.
And Ron, yep. All right. Sounds good. Well, we'll advance to the next question. So then, if light rail is constructed on 21st Avenue, would you like to see improvements on West Broadway Avenue? And I'll ask Chris maybe to give us just a little bit more of context here. What type of improvements we should expect?
Yeah, so if tracks are on 21st Avenue, it would mean there would be roadway construction on West Broadway. So a full roadway construction, sidewalks, landscaping, lighting, pavement, those types of improvements is what we're talking about there.
Thank you, Chris. All right, Ron is saying yes, so that will make it 4 for yes for improvements along West Broadway. And Sharon is saying yes, also 2 improvements along West Broadway. And Tess is saying very strongly yes. West Broadway has been in serious need of improvements for many years. Thank you, Tess. All right. If you have a response coming up, just feel free to put in the chat. We'll make sure that we go back to the chat and account for your responses.
Then we'll like to switch to the other portion of our meeting today. So we're going to get into the questions and answers portion of the meeting. So feel free to raise your hand, and then we'll unmute your microphone so you could ask your question. And if you'd like to put your question in the chat, please feel free to do so. Right. I'm not seeing anyone raising their hands. I'm not seeing anything in the chat either. I'll give folks a couple more minutes for folks who are still thinking about what questions I'd like to ask. All right, there's a question here. Looks like from Tess. I was wrapping up another meeting as this one started as some, maybe I missed it, but what is going into the decision of whether on whether to choose one of the east of I-94 routes, or is it just the Lindale route as the alternative? And Chris, Nick, though, if you could take this.
Are we able to put the slide back up
Yes.
just to show that? So at this time, I can start and Nick can jump into. As we mentioned, we are actually going to be evaluating both routes, so Lindale and east of 94, in the supplemental environmental impact statement. So both of them will receive the full evaluation, noise impacts. There's a number of different technical inputs. We look at traffic and trying to think, Neha could probably run through the list of technical inputs that will be in there. But so our policymakers will indicate which is their preference, and that is being driven primarily by meetings like this. So we're meeting with the community, we're getting feedback. We are also doing technical analyses along the way. We're not proposing any routes that couldn't be built or that are there was a number of routes that were considered that were dismissed because they were not technically feasible. But we're down to these options right here. It could be the ones east of 94. If we're able to get that down to one option east of 94, we might do that. But there would be the Lindale Avenue route studied in the document, and then the east of 94 studied.
All right.
So
you.
Nick, anything to add, or do we want to, I don't know if there's a question about what goes into the supplemental environmental impact statement.
No, I think that answered it.
Thank you. So there's a question here from Ron. When I looked on your website map, the blue line going on Washington, I saw the line going north of 16th Avenue, turn slightly west, Washington on the way to Broadway. What is that about?
Yeah, and I think I can clarify that. So, we have schematic lines, I think, as you're looking at public coordinator. Basically, it's the blow up of this map as you're looking at our website and the interactive map. And, it's just showing how those connections could be made. I think the preference is that we'd stay in Washington Avenue as long as we can before we have to cross over. And typically we want to cross through an intersection. So, one of the challenges with the pink line as you see it, as I brought up, is if we're running tightly against 94, it's difficult for us to get across, especially like the off ramp there, and not be in the intersection, because then the train ends up, if the train is running basically parallel but not into the road, then the train ends up being on its own signal cycle, and then that kind of clouds the intersection of how it operates. It adds another what we call a leg into that intersection, so you'd have to address all the traffic operations, and then you have to address the light rail operations. So it's safest and best to have the train in the middle, and that's what we try to do. But I think really the deal here is the schematic is really aligned right now, and we're looking for that alignment, and we will refine the design as we go forward, and try to stay on Washington as much as possible. And truthfully, I think in this scenario, we probably try to get at least through 17th before we would ever veer over to the west with any of these options.
Thank you, Nick. There's a clarifying question from Tess as a follow-up, and the question is related to narrowing the options for east of I-94, and maybe just a little bit of an idea on the timeline, when we would get there, would be useful to Tess.
Yeah, I can answer that. That's an excellent question. So when we write up the supplemental draft environmental impact statement, it can get very confusing we have to analyze every single one of these routes. So we have to analyze the 10th Avenue to Washington Avenue to West Broadway, and the 10th Avenue to Washington Avenue to 21st. So every possible iteration, we will have to write up in the environmental document. We are happy to do that. It just gets really difficult for you as the public when you're reading it to try to keep track of all of these iterations of routes. So when I say we may narrow down to one option east of 94, as we're going through this public process, we are hearing that people like the 10th Avenue to Washington Avenue sub option. That's the newer option that was added. So we'll have a conversation through our policymakers and through our project partners to see, is everybody preferring that green line that's shown on here, the sub option? So that's what I mean, that could happen, where the east of 94 is just a single line, and then the Lyndale is the alternative to that. But it's kind of to be determined right now.
All right. Thank you, Chris. There's a question from Eva. 21st would reduce impacts on Broadway, but the area near Capri on Broadway will still have a fair amount of building takings. Do I understand this correctly? Nick?
Yeah, I can answer that one. Yeah, so when we get to that section of West Broadway, the nice thing about that commercial core with 21st is there's a parallel roadway, so that's a parallel alignment or a parallel corridor that we could follow down, basically from 94 over to James. So you clearly bring that up, and that's one of the reasons that we're looking at 21st Avenue, because it does, part of our project goals and principles are, we want to reduce things as much as we can. We want to keep the wealth of the investment in that neighborhood there. Now at Penn Avenue, in that area there, obviously where the roadways are quite skewed. It's kind of going at a 45 to any east-west, north-south alignment. So we really don't have that parallel route through there to help relieve the pressure. So there are some building takes in that area. So some of those blue buildings that we're showing in that area. So what we're trying to do is do our best right now to be very conservative, meaning, if we believe at all there's an impact, we want to show it right now so we can have those discussions with those property owners, and that is happening right now. And as we get into design, if we can start reducing those down, we're really going to make every effort we can. So
I was just going to put this up here for reference if we're to orient folks. Yep.
Yeah.
All right.
And you see, I know, Eva, you've seen this slide before, and we have updated the pink buildings to blue, so they're all consistent.
All right. Thank you. And Ron is thanking us for the explanation. And then Tess also says, thank you. Can you go through the short-term timeline a bit more too? When will a decision be made about whether to narrow to one east of 94 option? What's the timeline for the SDIS? And will both Broadway and 21st options heading west be included?
Yeah, I can cover that. So the short-term timeline, a decision made about whether to narrow to one east of I-94 option, that would probably start to emerge after we have our corridor management committee meeting, which is August 10th, I want to say. Let's see. At this time, we're planning on evaluating everything that you saw on the map that we just brought up, all of the options, but it would be August 10th, and then it's in September. September 14th is the next corridor management committee meeting after that, where we will ask them to probably act on a resolution that kind of summarizes all of just a single line on the map, the number of stations, from Brooklyn Park all the way down to Minneapolis. That's the action in September 14th. The timeline for the SDEIS. So we need, first we need a line on a map so that we can finish our work and so that we can get that document prepared. It has to be reviewed actually 3 or 4 times by the Federal Transit Administration. It is a federal document and a federal process. And so they need to review it. They do the check on us to make sure we've evaluated everything that by law we're required to take a look at. So that's why there's so many reviews by them. It won't be ready to be published until next year sometime, several months into the new year, actually. So we will be able to give a more definitive timeline on the publishing once we've selected these options, or once the corridor management committee has made that recommendation. And then both West Broadway and 21st options will be included in the supplemental draft EIS. Both of them will be evaluated. We hope that there would be a recommendation on the preferred option, but both will be evaluated. And what that means is if the policymakers got it wrong, and we hear feedback from all of you next year when that document is published, that would flip to the other option, there's still the opportunity to do that. That's the purpose of the 45-day comment period once it's published.
Thank you, Chris. All right, it looks like Christian Son has got a question. I'm going to go ahead and unmute your microphone so you could. All right, go ahead, Mark, sorry. Yep.
I think Mark's.
Yeah, it's good. I just have a couple of comments and then a question. So definitely in favor of that sub option for East 94. I like that the line would be serving a lot of affordable housing communities there, Minneapolis public housing. I think there's some apartment buildings, so some high density residential in there you're also able to serve. So a lot of destinations. And then also there's a bouldering gym and a brewery up on Great River Road in Plymouth that it's a little bit closer to as well, which is something that I think would be good. And so I think that's a nice option. Just one question I have. So what are the runtime impacts of the different alignments? So what would be the travel duration changes of the different options there is kind of what I'm really wondering.
A quick analysis of run times. They're fairly close. I think it's probably about a little bit longer as we go to the east side of 94, just because we have to make that crossing, get a little bit farther over and come back. So adds a little bit of run time to that station, but actually some of the stations end up serving more ridership there. The actual, if it's West Broadway or 21st, the run times there are pretty much the same between them. As you look at that option, ridership and runtime, we expect to be pretty close to the same.
Thank you, Nick.
And I will say I'm sandbagging run times a little bit because these are, we're at the point now where we're doing them on like a, I would say more of a back of the napkin. It's really when we get that alignment in there and we know what, where the intersections are going, what that route is where we really put that runtime mile. So that comes really after we get a more defined time. It's more accurate once we know speeds and stations and lanes and the alignment.
All right, thank you. All right, looks like Mark, you've got your hand raised again. You can go ahead.
I have another question, sorry.
Yes.
So
it's okay.
I'm just curious, you talked a little bit about the different options for transportation on 10th Avenue. And I'm just wondering, so if it's the one lane of northbound traffic versus kind of like the pedestrian, bicycle transit, transit way, kind of that option, do you know if there will be impacts on like pedestrian and bicycle safety with those two alternatives? And kind of, I'm just thinking about what would probably be easiest for people that are kind of walking or biking or rolling in that area.
I guess obviously if there's no vehicles on there, then really we're getting rid of that vehicle conflict. So if it's a transitway, it's probably a little bit safer for peds and bikes and affords the ability to have a little bit more room for peds and bikes in there. So that would be the bigger distance. It probably a transitway would have much more be skewed more towards the peds and bikes and transit in there because the vehicles aren't there. So either option, we really will focus on safety and how we maintain, put those safe routes, lanes, bike lanes, sidewalks, crossings on either one of them. That's key for us.
All right, thank you, Nick. There's a comment in the chat, Mark saying that he likes the transitway option.
Okay.
Thank you, Mark. Any other questions? Anyone else? Questions, comments? All right, I see a question from Tess. SDIS covers a lot. Will it include anything about advantages to connections to the larger transit and transportation network? As a Northeast resident, the most significant aspect of this project to me personally is being able to access the Blue Line without crossing 94.
Do we want to have Neha jump in on this question?
Yes.
Sure. Hi, sorry, first of all, I won't be able to turn my camera on. I'm taking it on my phone. My computer is giving a lot of trouble with Teams, but thank you for the question. So yes, in the SDIS, we study the connections in transportation and different modes of transport as well. So it will be studied in the SDIS for all the options on the table.
We should introduce Neha. She's our environmental lead for the project. So that's why we have her answer the question.
That's right. Thank you. Thank you, Nia. I appreciate that. Thank you, Tess, as well. Anyone else? Any comments, questions? All right, great. Well, I'd like to thank you for attending this evening meeting, putting valuable time aside to learn about the project. Thank you for your participation. I am going to put up a slide here real quick so that you know how to get in contact with us. Before I do that, there's a question that has just popped in. This is from Ron.
Ron, right now we have engineering consultants and they're doing a very good job for us. We're very happy and confident with the work they're doing. So at this time, we do not anticipate that.
Thank you, everyone. I hope you're not hearing the background noise. You have got a child who's wailing in the hallway there. Sorry about that. But this is how to get in contact with us. We have our website on this slide. You can follow us on Twitter or on Facebook. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.